Hey guys, Eric here. I'm excited and nervous today to be bringing to you Love, Relationships, Sex, and Lies. I reference these two books quite a bit in this video. Wild at Heart by John Eldredge and The Good News About Marriage by Shaunti Feldhahn. I am not associated with either of them. I don't get anything out of them. If you do happen to buy it, I just believe they're really good resources for you. If take time to pause the video and grab a notepad and something to write with, I'll be waiting on the other side of the break. What is love? Is it an emotion? Is it for the lucky and the beautiful? Is it just romance? Is it momentary bliss? Is it more than sentiment and selfish gain? There's so many takes on what love is, from Hollywood to music, and it's usually portrayed in some sort of form of sex. Hollywood portrays it as this beautiful couple, that the stars align and it all comes together and it's the best relationship and the sex is really good and that it's just so good mostly because of the sex. Or with our music, it's hard to find any genre of music where there aren't just love songs galore, just talking about how great it is to be in love and how much they just, they want to have sex and make love with each other. There's this one song that this guy, he talks about how he's in love with the shape of the woman. It says, "I'm in love with the shape of you." Well, those might be good song lyrics, but I mean, if you go out and say that on the street, or is a woman gonna be like, "Oh wow, yeah." The lyrics might sound good, but aren't women really more than a shape? There's other songs as well that talk about, the meeting them at the club or wherever, party or whatever, and they talk about how wonderful and beautiful they are, and let's go somewhere else or whatever, and you know what it alludes to. But Andy Mineo, he has this song, and in it he talks about women go to the club and let men feel up on them, but you do that anywhere else, it's a real problem. And it seems like that's the way it is in life. We have all these songs, but we live in a culture where we can touch each other's bodies, but we can't touch each other's phones. We can touch each other's bodies, but never their heart. We have sex, but we don't have love. I come across some quotes about love here recently, and I'm going to read them to you real quick. This one's by Joyce Meyer. "Loving others always costs us something and requires effort. You have to decide to do it on purpose. You can't wait for a feeling to motivate you." C.S. Lewis said this: "Love is not an affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good as far as it can be attained." Katharine Hepburn said this: "Love has nothing to do with what you are expecting to get, only with what you are expecting to give, which is everything." Paulo Coelho, Coelho, how do you pronounce that? He said this: "When we love, we always strive to become better than we are. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too." And Bob Goff, I heard him say this the other day: "When love has an agenda, it is not love anymore." Those are pretty powerful right there. I'm going to read some lyrics from the song "Temptation" by 116. "Some of y'all have bought the lie that sex is what makes you a man, but that's not what makes you a man. Anybody can go and lay with a woman. What makes you a man is being defined by who you say you are in Christ. Sex is a gift from God, but we've taken it and made it idolatry. We've taken it and put it in the place of God, and we worship it, and so it comes out in all kinds of profane ways. And so we blame the women for what they're wearing. We blame the media for what they are producing, but we never blame ourselves for how we've twisted God's gift to glorify us." We inherently know that our desire for love and sex is written deep within our heart. So let's delve deeper into our heart. Written on the heart of every man is the desire for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. And written on the heart of every woman is the desire to be fought for, an adventure to share, and a beauty to unveil. She desires truly to be the beauty and delighted in. God has called men to be warriors, but too many are mercenaries. He has called them to fight for their families, not just when it's convenient or benefits them. Men want to look like the knight in shining armor, they just don't want to bleed like one. Women want to control the adventure. They either hide behind busyness or they're demanding that their man comes through for them, and it's usually an odd combination of both. Now that we see the desires of our heart, let's look at how this plays out in real life. We all know the desires for marriage is written on our hearts, and it usually comes alive in our teenage years, and it starts even earlier in girls. Boys are playing with trucks and fighting, and girls are having tea parties and dress ups, and they're learning what it means to really be a woman. I remember when I was young, my cousins and I, we'd play, and I'd be doing my thing, and they'd want us to play house or whatever, and no adults sat us down and was like, now this is what you do. They just would be like, okay, you go over here and we're gonna cook, and I was like, whatever, I gotta play with my trucks or my action figures or whatever, and then they tell me come home and they feed me their fake meal. And this wasn't just something they were doing, they were practicing for real life, because this is written in their heart. Once they get older, they get rid of the princess dresses, and then they turn to attracting their Prince Charming, and they know that men are attracted to them, so then they start to dress in ways that may not be the most appropriate. And you can see this, and a lot of times you can tell, like, if a girl's dating somebody or not, just by simply what she's wearing. I saw this photo a few years ago or sometime back, and it showed a little thing of a single woman, one in a relationship, and one married, and it's kind of funny, because just the way you looked at it, it was a single woman, had her shirt come way down, one in a relationship real high, and then one that married, she was like wearing a turtleneck. It was like, but it's so true, because you always seem to see that girl that you can tell she's single at lunch, she comes back in, well, she done covered up, or she in a relationship, she covered up, and then she comes back from lunch and she like, what happened? The shorts get a little higher when she's single, they get a little lower when she's taken, You also see this play out in social media, their profile pic, gonna be their face, and all of a sudden they're single, it's like, up here you're like, we know you're just not taking a picture of your face. I was listening to Stephen Furtick some years back, and I remember just about exactly where I was, and he said, what you draw them with is what you draw them to. So remember that if you draw them to your body, when it changes, don't be surprised when they're looking at somebody else, because you drew them to a picture, you drew them to something physical. When they go to something physical again, don't be surprised. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying, but if you draw them to who you are, when your body changes, that'll never matter. But if you draw them to something that's going to change on your body, there's always going to be somebody come around later that's going to give you a run for your money. I heard years ago that boys play with love to get sex, and that girls play with sex to get love. Sad but true on a number of levels. Backseat promises may sound fun in the moment, but backseat promises fade like the mist. I was at this conference here in Texarkana one weekend, and the speaker that got up there is Scott Thomas, and he was saying that a man will be anything, do anything, and say anything to win the affections of a woman. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's so good. Guys want to date wild girls, but they want to marry good girls. It may bring you attention now, but it won't bring you long-lasting happiness. I was at the gym some months back doing my thing, and they have TVs throughout the gym, and there was one there, and I was like, well, I'll see what's going on, in the sports world. And I looked, and it was like, it's not sports, who doesn't watch sports in the gym? Anyway, whatever, it was The Bachelorette, and I was like, but I got, they had the subtitles there, and I was like, got intrigued by what they were talking about. The whole thing of it's kind of weird anyway. It's like all these guys trying to date this woman, and they're all kissing on each other and they go to the next one, and I don't know, the whole thing's weird anyway, but whatever. And they go and they're on their whatever date thing or whatever, and the guy that she was talking to at this particular time is a virgin, and so it was like, whoa, so the guys off camera talking, and it's like this whole big deal, and it's like none of the other stuff, and they just talked about how great they were together, and it was like, but if there's one thing, that's, I guess, I don't know, it came down to this one thing, that how good was he going to be in bed, and that was it. It didn't matter about the chemistry they had or anything, and it came down to that. And sadly, that's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people say, well, you wouldn't buy a car without test driving it first. But first of all, a person isn't a vehicle, and second of all, test driving is dating. Marriage comes with sex, that comes with ownership. Not that when you marry somebody, you own them, but that's the car equivalent of sex and ownership, if that makes sense. So really, that's just an excuse to have sex, because when you test drive a vehicle, you're seeing if you really want it. That's what you do when you date somebody. Do you really want to take this farther? Do you want to, drive this off the lot? Do you want to take it home? That's what you do when you marry somebody. You take them to your house. You move under one house. If you don't, you keep them out there, and you go to another one. You go date somebody else. That is what, test driving really is. People often say, well, why do I need a piece of paper? That's all marriage really is, right? Well, see, when I was listening to Mark Driscoll some years back, and he's saying the purpose of marriage is oneness, not sex. You can live with someone and still not know them. You can know what somebody's body looks like and still not know them. I'm going to read you something Real Talk Kim posted on Instagram a few days back. Just because you have sex with someone over a long period of time doesn't mean you are close to them. Some people will let you touch every part of their body, but won't let you anywhere near their heart and soul. As crazy as it sounds, the way you get to know somebody is you talk to them, you actually get to know them. Sex doesn't help you get to know anyone. Sex is not the foundation for anything, but we try and build 50 years of our life on it. Another serious issue is serial dating. I came across this photo some time back, and it was saying, this person's my world, and the response was, what are you trying to build, a solar system? That's your fourth person in 2 months. Dating back to back to back is never good, because it trains you to just keep going to the next relationship, and when you get married, then when things seem a little off or weird, well, that wasn't right, so you just try and go to the next one, so then you cause a whole bunch of other problems. After every relationship, you need time to process. If you were the one broken up with and then you go to somebody else, well, they were most likely just a rebound. And if you're the one doing the breaking up with, well, you need to process why. What did you not like about that? What are you really looking for? And if you were the one that got broke up with, you need time to emotionally heal. You need time to process why. Just different things like that. Processing gives you time to know yourself. Have you ever heard somebody say, well, I always seem to fall for the wrong person? Well, why is that? Are you processing through why you always seem to date a certain type of person? An example is, if you're tired of dating guys that always drive motorcycles, and you want to date somebody that drives a truck, well, you have to stop hanging out with the guys that drive motorcycles. You have to go to where the guys that drive trucks hang out. And if, you're a guy and you're tired of dating girls that only skateboard and you want to date a cheerleader, well, you have to go to a football game or a cheer competition. I know those are kind of odd examples, but, people always get this, well, I always date, this type of person or this type of person. It's like, well, who, what would your ideal person look like? And if the person you come across that, makes your heart flutter, well, say, well, do they match up to what the ideal person I would like to marry would be? And if not, just say, no, thank you. It's taken me a while, but I finally reached this stage where I can, just look at people and be like, no, or whatever. And, most of the time that's saying no to wonderful people. It's not like they're terrible, horrible people. It's saying, the no to really wonderful people, and just saying, that's just not for me, and not even pursuing that. If you don't have a vision for what you want your marriage to look like, your dating will be all over the place. And if you don't have a vision for your marriage, you'll just go with the flow, and you just think, well, I'll just meet somebody and we'll have 2.2 kids and we'll just try and tough it out until death do us part. It seems to me too many people have a goal to be married, not to have a strong marriage at death do us part. Really, their goal is the marriage day. Their goal isn't marriage 50 years in. It's easy to get married. Anybody can go get married, and you see it all the time through social media. 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 years later, they're getting a divorce because it didn't turn out like they thought it would. When I was in college, my buddy and I, we'd talk about the different girls that were, they were going for the Mrs. degree, that MRS degree. They were going to be married is what it seemed like a lot of them were doing, and you could usually tell what they were wanting, because they were like, well, I'm here for general studies, or I'm still undecided. And because see, that was their goal. They wanted to be married. Relationships are more than about getting married, and marriage is more than about having children and crossing your fingers hoping that you make it till death do us part. I was listening to a local pastor here, Isaac Petrie, talk about marriage, and he was saying marriage is about purpose. And something just clicked, and then I remembered something I heard Stephen Furtick say years back, that where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. We have to know our purpose. We have a purpose when we're single, and we have a purpose for our marriage. See, Adam and Eve, God gave Adam and Eve purpose. Adam had a purpose before Eve came, and then when they came, he gave them a purpose together. And it was more than just having children. It was, they were multiplying themselves as well. Yeah, children was a part of that, but it wasn't the sum total of their calling. To rephrase Mark Driscoll, marriage is not about sex, but it's about oneness. You have to make sure each of your purposes match up. If somebody's called to, live in New York City, and their purpose is over in New York, and then somebody else's purpose is in California, well, they're going to have a hard time because they're so far apart. You have to make sure they line up. If somebody is called to be a teacher here in the United States somewhere, and somebody's called to be a missionary overseas, there's going to be this constant fighting over who's doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they're supposed to be a team, but you're trying to separate a team. It never works out very good. How many people have you come across where it's like they're supposed to be doing this, or they feel called to do this, but there's always this tension where it's like they're not really, so they just kind of sort of do things, and they don't really do what they feel like is the call on their life. If you want your marriage to have a higher chance of success, you have to have a few things in alignment. Marriages have a higher chance of success if you didn't live together before you're married, you have the same religious views, and you both have a college education. Which I still haven't quite got the college education one, but it's what all the experts say. Listening to the conversation of adults when I was growing up and reading different things has really put the spotlight on religious views being the same, and just those different things where, I overheard or read when I was younger was that, it was always, always so interesting that, they had different religious beliefs, and it was always kind of cool and this, and they liked that about the other person. Well, then when they had kids, all of a sudden, well, you can't raise my kid over in that religion or take them to that church or whatever, and so then you have them where there's always this big fight, or they're going 1 week with mom, 1 week with dad, or it's all kinds of crazy stuff, or usually end up in divorce just because they didn't say, they were unequally yoked. Probably the biggest piece of advice I've received about dating somebody is, make sure they believe the same thing you do. In my case, make sure they're a Christian, believe in God. But some things I haven't heard, people say you should talk about is, how do they view raising kids? Do they even want kids? I know a story, my teachers, her son and his wife, they were dated for a while, were getting married, and then she told them the night they were getting married that she wasn't having kids, and it threw them off. They ended up getting married, but I'm thinking, you waited until then, you didn't discuss that earlier. What do they view about, what are their views on money? Money is the number one cause of divorce, but I've never heard anybody ask, how do you, handle money? What do you think about money? What do you want to do in that regard? Also, what their ideal family life looks like. Is my idea of family and, their idea of family the same? Because people, surprisingly have different views of family and how families communicate and do different things. And this one's very hard, and you have to be very delicate with this one, but body image. What are your standards on their physical appearance? What are those going to look like when they age and change? And, have those discussions. If you have the hard discussions early, it'll make them much easier later. Now let's look at lies that we believe about marriage and just a few things that God has revealed to me throughout the years. The first lie we believe about marriage is that most couples aren't happy, but that's really not true. It's a lot closer to 75-80% are, and only a small percentage of the remaining 25 are absolutely unhappy. The second thing that we believe is that the divorce rate is 50% or thereabout, when in reality, that's not the case. The reality is, though, people do get divorced, and it's about 25-30% that actually do. When they look at the statistics, they say, this is the number of marriages the last year, and this is how many people got divorced. Well, that was half. And when they talk about, it was like 14,000, some people got married 1 year, and then 7,000 got divorced. Well, it was almost half. But really, 14,000, there's like 300,000 marriages, and 7,000 got divorced. So it was like 2%. And so it could be a little higher, it could be a little less. So when you're talking the population of the U.S., it's 25 to 30%. So it's nowhere near the 50% that they talked about. Just because 14,000 people got married 1 year doesn't mean half of them got divorced. And then another thing that they do is they say, so how many people made it to their 40th wedding anniversary? Well, they didn't make it, so they got divorced, is what they just include. But it's more likely that, there was death in there is why they are no longer married. They don't look at deaths in the family. And, some of us, they look at, teenagers that are married and, it didn't last 5 years and they got divorced. So it looks like all these statistics are, way higher than they really are. Marriage is meant to be an adventure, not a prison sentence. The world says one night, God says forever. What you think you're worth is what you'll get. Boys and girls have sex and play house. Men and women get married and have homes. Boys destroy, men nurture. Boys take, men invest. Boys follow, men lead. Men pray, boys play. When you don't spend time with the one you love, your love grows cold. Emily Dickinson wrote this: forever is composed of nows. A few years back, the movie Just Married came out, and near the end, the groom asked his father-in-law how him and his wife were always so happy, and he said, you stick together in the tough times, and then you have all these pictures where you're smiling and super happy. And just remember that whatever you're going through, it's not the end. You can make it through. Choose to love in the hard times, and then you will have a forever marriage. Valentine's Day is just around the corner. Don't forget to show your significant other how much you love and appreciate them, but don't just do it once a year. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed day, and remember, the best is yet to be.